All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're on a mission to bridge the wealth gap through financial literacy. Stuff I love to talk about. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. All right, Business Bros, in today's episode, we're diving into the incredible story of resilience, determination, and financial empowerment. From the humble beginnings in Section 8 housing to becoming a serial entrepreneur, our guest has transformed her life and now dedicates it to transforming others. With a rich background in personal finance, real estate, and a passion for closing the poverty gap, she's not changing the game, she's rewriting the rules for success. So get ready to be inspired by the one and only Miss Angela Duncan. All right, Angela, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today. That was an incredible intro. I was almost wondering, who the heck are you talking about?
It's all about you. This is the story of your life and what you're doing. Let's jump into this. First of all, the first question I always try to get out the way is you're here to promote something. There's something that you do for a living, a message you want to get out. What is that?
Yeah, I would love your audience to tune into Empower Her Money podcast, where I share stories and interviews of business entrepreneurs. We talk about money and business, and let's change the world together.
Boom. I love that. I teach a class called Financial Algebra. And it's for high school seniors that are about to graduate, go out in the world. We cover all the personal finance stuff, including business stuff. And it's one of those things that's it's weird because they're 17, so it's not relevant information for them yet, but they don't realize that they're like 6 months away from every single topic we talk about in class becoming ultimately relevant. So walk me through your background, your story. How'd you get into deciding that financial literacy was going to be the thing you talked about?
Yeah, I'm a survivor of poverty and childhood abuse. And so what poverty meant for me as a kid growing up, Section 8 housing, welfare. I've lived in parks, cars, motel rooms, other people's houses, all before I was 15 years old. So when I was old enough at 18 to sign my own lease, I moved out because I was on this money journey. I always thought if I had money, then I could have had clothes and the kids wouldn't make fun of me. I wouldn't have to worry about school lunches and eating Taco Bell every Friday. And so I really just started this journey about learning about money because I was running away from poverty as a kid.
One of those things that I tell my students all the time is this game of money. It's funny because it is a game, right? Like I always explain how the first time you play Monopoly, you probably were terrible at it, but the second time you played Monopoly, all of a sudden you had a chance of winning. The difference between the first and the second game is you understood the rules and how the game is played. You grew up poor. I grew up in a very similar situation. We had homeless spouts that we had during while we were growing up. Parents had to kind of restart over. And on the one side, it's like, man, I wish things would have been different. On the other side, it kind of made me who I am today. Looking back, would you really have changed stuff?
No, I really think that like what you're talking about right there, growing up in poverty was a huge advantage for me because when you don't know what you don't know, you don't feel like you have anything to lose. You kind of lose a little bit of that fear mentality, right? And you're just want to go after, what is this money thing? How do I use it in my life? How do I use it to, create a lifestyle that I can only envision at this point or dream of because we didn't have it around us. I didn't have TV. I didn't know what anything else looked like other than what was my reality as a kid. So yeah, I think it was a huge advantage growing up.
Now we live in a different time. I grew up at a time, same. Like there was no internet when I was growing up. I didn't have my first pager until I was in high school, cell phone a little bit after that. Social media wasn't a thing until MySpace came out, and I was in my 20s when that happened. So it was a different time for me. But back then, we didn't have access to information like we do today. How have things changed, and how are you helping guide people now that they have almost an unlimited amount of resources in front of them to avoid the same pitfalls that we had when we had no resources in front of us.
Right? We're in an age where there's so much information. And so what happens is when you have so much information, you're overwhelmed and you get confused. And confused people do not take action. So really, how do we teach money? How do we teach investing? How do we teach budgeting in a very simple format so people can implement it and take action and actually do something instead of, hearing so many different thoughts and theories on how to invest? There's crypto, there's real estate, there's stock market. I teach one thing. I stay in my lane. I've been investing in real estate for over 20 years, and I know how to budget because I've had to for many, many years. And so I just want to keep it simple. Like, I want to make it in the simplest form that you can understand and just take one step at a time, but you have to take the action.
Real estate is a phenomenal investment, and oftentimes people don't get into it simply because they don't have the habits in place to be able to put some money away to get to a position where all of a sudden they can look at some of these investment opportunities. Now, I'm in California, so everything in real estate, we have to add a zero at the end of it because it's always much more expensive, but it doesn't mean there aren't opportunities in abundance across the country for people who just want to get started as an investor and they've never done anything before. Where do you begin?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things, especially in California, to do is to learn about tax lien investing. A tax lien is when a property owner does not pay their property taxes and essentially a lien is placed on the property. In California, they do a tax deed, which literally means you're going to go buy that property on the courthouse steps or online. And you can get into that for a lot less money than buying a single family home and turning that into a rental, or, getting into some of these large mutual funds or real estate investment trusts, as we call them for real estate. You really just need to pick a lane, become a student, learn about that, and then take action. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. Find out.
No, you're right. If you make a mistake, it's okay. One of the first books I ever was into, the first book that I got to money-wise was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then right after that, I read The Richest Man in Babylon. And part of the core function of that book is to put 10% away for yourself so that you put it to work, to create an army of golden slaves that you put to work. And I feel that part right there, the putting the money away for yourself, is one of the most difficult things people struggle with. Dave Ramsey talks about having the emergency fund. Kiyosaki talks about leveraging debt. All of them have this idea of having a discipline first. Do you ever come across that with your clients and people who come on the podcast that struggle with that very first discipline of putting money away for themselves?
Yeah, and you have to change that mindset, right? So if you're investing in your education, putting money aside, or what you're talking about, then you have to think of this as the most unselfish thing you could do. Because if you take care of yourself first, now you can learn and you can teach other people. Imagine like impacting just one other person in your world, because they're always watching you. So if you're taking the time to invest and spend the money on yourself through a mentor, coach, program, whatever that looks like for you, learn about something first, take that action, but understand that you taking that time for you first is the most unselfish thing that we can do. And we deserve to take care of ourselves and help everybody that's around us, but it has to start with you first.
Learn to have money first, learn to have it. Then all of a sudden, a lot of doors open up for you. Now, investing in real estate, especially when you've never done it before. First of all, the hardest thing in that space is learning the vocabulary. You mentioned tax liens, and if that's the first time you've ever heard the word lien, and it's not spelled like when you're leaning on somebody, it could be daunting. Is there a way where I can find somebody to work with that is in that space so that I don't make some of those mistakes that I hear horror stories about in that real estate space?
Yeah, two things. Number one, books. And if you're just starting out and you want to go to the library and check out a book on tax lien, you can find tons of them there. And two, just like where your podcast goes, YouTube. YouTube is an incredible source of videos, and there's so much information out there. So like I said, again, pick the lane. So if it's tax liens, Google it and go into YouTube, find some videos, learn about it, and then start following some pages that are talking about it to really like digest that information that you're getting. Yeah, like you said, if you've never done this before and it's a whole other language, you got to learn how to speak the language before you start doing the investing.
Now you've been at this for over 25 years, and you've had experience in real estate and personal finance. And I'm sure you've come across all kinds of myths that people have stopped them from taking that action step, from stop them from moving forward. And in my opinion, most of them are self-imposed. But
Mhm.
um, what have you seen? What have you encountered as some of those myths that people bring up that you help them debunk?
Yeah, a lot of times people say I don't have enough money to start. That's not true. In my state here, I live in Florida, you can buy a tax lien for $500. It's just starting on that journey. Two, real estate is big. It can be really big, right? And what I mean by that is we're brainwashed by Wall Street. Wall Street tells you 8, 9, 10%. That's normal return. And while that might be normal in the stock market, it's typically not normal in real estate. You can create so much more wealth and income from real estate than you can in the stock market. Now, I do suggest diversifying. I have a portfolio in the stock market. I do retirement planning through the stock market. So I'm not 100% in real estate. It's good to hedge and be in different avenues. But again, I've spent a lot of time researching and taking the time to implement what I've learned over 2 decades in different areas. But yeah, I forgot what the question was. I think I went off on the tangent.
No, no worries. It was about the myths that you've
Hmm.
helped uncover from people who, they come into the game and they're like, I don't know how to do this. And that's a perfect example of a myth that they've been overcome. And well, let me since you've gotten into real estate stuff, let me ask you about your background, because you owned a Remax. You sold over 2 billion in real estate, by the way. Impressive. And that's not something that just people, do in real estate all the time. But what strategies do you think might work today? A lot of people are like, dude, we're at the top of this bubble. It's been a run on the market forever. People are looking at the interest rates and going, how am I ever going to be able to buy something here? And I don't think people quite understand. You've been in real estate long enough to know up markets, down markets, buyers markets, sellers markets. There are still people buying and selling. There are still opportunities. If people are hesitant, what's your experience as, owning a Remax and selling real estate over time? What do you tell them when the market is the way it is today?
Yeah, it depends on your situation, but like you said, there's always a buying opportunity no matter what market we're in. Yes, interest rates are a little bit higher. So, what we're seeing on the commercial space, we're finding a lot more deals on the commercial space, meaning like apartment complexes. It's cheaper to buy an apartment complex today than it is to build in most areas. And so, you've got to do your own cost analysis, right? If you're looking to buy a house, is it really more beneficial for you and your pocketbook to buy? Or is it more beneficial right now to rent and use that savings to invest it somewhere so it grows quicker instead of you buying? Here in Miami, it's really expensive, and both renting and buying is expensive. So, looking at what our market looks like, it's cheaper to rent in Miami than it is to buy. So, understanding that you have to be willing to, perhaps rent for a bit and invest that money, grow it. And then when we see either a shift in the interest rates, or if prices come down, or if you move, then perhaps it's going to be a buying opportunity for you. But every single market has a buying opportunity. You just have to learn it and understand it first so that you can take action in when you see a deal.
Now, Angela, you came from no money, and you've learned a lot about money. You've been in the real estate space successfully, but you were also in the insurance space successfully. And I feel that's like a year. I feel like as I'm learning more about your story, I'm like walking a very similar path. My very first business, it was a computer repair company. I didn't really know anything about business. I was young. I kind of just decided I was going to do this thing to help my brother out. And in shutting the business down, I realized what I didn't know. I didn't know anything about taxes. I didn't know anything about insurance. I didn't know anything about real estate, all these different things. And immediately after I went broke that very first time in my early 20s, I enrolled in tax school and I got my insurance license. And I feel like you kind of went somewhere along the same path. Tell me a little bit about that insurance agency that you ended up building and selling, and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah, so to quickly touch on what you said, I didn't go down the tax professional route, but I do like reading the tax books that come out every year because it's got updates and I want to understand how I can use those rules, right?
Nobody likes reading the textbooks, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But the IRS makes these rules, and if you don't know about them, you can't take advantage of them. So they're out there. It's like you've got to learn. As far as the insurance business in Florida, it just got really tough, and we've had some carriers leave. We've had increases in premiums. So my one piece of advice for anyone who's not in the insurance business, is to shop your policy. Every single renewal, reach out to your agent and shop it, because unless you're asking, most likely they're not going to do it because it's time consuming. And so in order for me to keep my clients, if they reach out to me and they want me to shop, I'm going to spend the time to do that. Otherwise, the renewals just come so fast that it's hard for an insurance agent to keep up with a lot of that. So ask your insurance agent to shop every renewal. What I learned is, in a tough market like we had for the last couple of years in insurance, was a buying opportunity. I was buying other people's books of business and rolling it into mine. It was easier for me to grow by acquisition and buying other people who just didn't want to be in the market anymore than it was to grow my own business. So I grew fairly quickly that way. And then I learned, as I exited, creative financing. If you're either looking to buy or sell, figure out a different way to buy or sell. There's private money. There's working out a deal with the current owner where you can profit share, and then they kind of stay involved in the business a little bit. But look outside of the banks, because the banks are not wanting to lend a whole lot right now. So you've got to come up with different ways and strategies to continue to grow your business. Or if you want to start a business, buy something first. So much easier to buy an existing business than it is to start from scratch.
I'd agree with that 100%. That's exactly how we got in the insurance space as well, buying an office and then getting in there and trying to fix what was already broken. But it was one of the greatest lessons as far as the insurance space is concerned. Now, you're also certified as a Dave Ramsey coach, which kind of opens the door to a lot of different things. I'm going to start off with the difference between the Ramsey and the Kiyosaki model when it comes to debt. Right. And you're in real estate, so you take on debt, but you're a Dave Ramsey certified coach. Walk me through where does that kind of balance out for you when you're telling people, hey, you should have zero debt, but then we're leveraging over here on the investment side?
Yeah, so I don't follow 100% Dave Ramsey. When people come to me and they're just overwhelmed, they're in debt, credit card debt, student loans, they just don't know what they're spending money on. Dave Ramsey, like I said earlier, is like very simple. He's got action items in there. He takes you through 7 steps. And while I may not recommend finishing all 7 steps, I'm going to teach you and I'm going to present it to you. I want you to get out of bad debt, which is credit card debt with high interest rates, or living beyond your means, not having enough income to cover your debt. How do we reduce your expenses to get you into a place so now we can use debt in a good way when we go into real estate investing? So I want to first get your financial house in a solid foundation, and Dave Ramsey is an incredible program to do that. And then when you're ready, we can move into the real estate investing side, but it might not be for you. Maybe you just want to get out of debt completely and live the rest of your life that way. No problem. It's going to work for a certain segment of the market. But for those that want to build true generational wealth, you've got to use and leverage debt in order to get there.
Now, education to me has always been the key. It might not necessarily be college, right? But education for sure is one of those things that is an absolute must. And one of the ways that I've found as a cheat code to education has been literally doing this podcasting. I've been able to meet with, connect with, and learn from so many amazing people just like yourself that have taught me a number of different things, or even given me another perspective on some of the things I already thought I knew, which is amazing in and of itself. You have your own podcast, and I'm wondering, what do you think has been like the key ingredient to your success and your impact using your podcast?
Yeah, very similar to what you're doing. You know, we can't change the world being one person, but we can as a group. And so if I can teach something to your audience that they might not know about, you know, maybe they relate to my story and then they listen to what I say and they take action. That's the incredible piece. And for me, I am interviewing people probably just like you do all over the world. And we get to hear different perspectives about money and about business and how things work in different countries. And it's just, it's cool to understand like other aspects of business in different areas, because we all approach things very differently. And I was on a podcast for this woman who was in Nigeria, and I was trying to explain to her my level of poverty. And then she went into her level of poverty. And I was just like, wow, I am so grateful for everything I have, because I couldn't imagine what she had to go through, right? So the power behind the group of people teaching and helping to impact lives in an area where it's free for people to listen to, I mean, that's incredible. It's like we have a mission. And it's our responsibility to carry out that mission. And we can reach such a broader audience through podcasting.
It's funny how humbling those experiences can be. Huh? I mean, my family has always been one of those that kind of pretty much lives at church. They do missionary things all the time. They would go down to Mexico is one of those things that we would do on a regular basis and give out food and give out clothes. And I always knew I was poor growing up. The thing about money is that we didn't have any ever. Like that was kind of a thing. But then to go to another part of the world where even on my brokest day, I was still way better off than that situation. That perspective gives you so much, it gives you perspective in life. Like it gives you gratitude for what you do and don't have, and kind of justifies like, hey dude, if that's where the lower is, I'm doing pretty good. And it's up to me to take that next step and go on to that next level. What do you feel is probably the most challenging part of closing that poverty gap, of seeing where people are, of seeing where you are, and closing that gap of where you want to go?
Yeah, if I could change anything about the high school system, I would want the kids, just like you were talking about, to go and really immerse themselves in a different culture so that they can see and appreciate what they have here, right? I love that your parents did that. I did with my daughter. I've taken her on mission trips, and for her to see what a different life looks like for these kids, like we've visited orphanages in other countries, and just these kids are happy, right? They're happy that they have a roof over their head. They're happy they have food because maybe, the situation they were in, they didn't have that before. But if we could take the time to really see what other people live like throughout the world, I feel like we would just have this huge gratitude for what we have here, and this positivity that we can just kind of share life with people and be positive and gracious and just come from empathy and help other people. I think that would just be a huge shift for our kids to teach them that difference that we have in abundance here. And it will really help that their mindset would change too.
Oh, 100%. Plus for me, the podcasting thing and having access to people kind of gives me inspiration as well. I think part of the problem with the poverty gap as well, when you're looking at certain situations, especially early on when I was younger and we didn't have access to see other people, all we saw was what was glamorized on TV. It was like super poor and like super rich. And there was nothing in between. But being able to see what other people are doing, finding mentors and being able to talk to other people to see what their lifestyle is, not always the Lamborghinis driving and rolling up in a penthouse isn't everybody's way, but to have lifestyle businesses and different aspects of life that people kind of gravitate towards through their business. To me, seeing that gives me an opportunity to become that. And I think that's what you're kind of showing with your podcast. Tell me a little bit about how can if I wanted to learn more about your podcast, if I want to listen to more about your podcast, if I wanted to find out more about your coaching, how could we do that?
Yeah, empowerhermoney.com is my website. Empower Her Money on Instagram and TikTok. Empower Her Money on podcast. Same language, every area. I've learned to brand properly, hopefully. But that any platform that you're on, Empower Her Money, you're going to find me.
Now, selfishly, what has the podcast done for you and your business, and why do you keep doing it?
I love learning and just meeting other people. I mean, probably unlike you, I don't do any podcast promotion. I don't teach people how to launch podcasts. I'm going to leave that to you and the pros. I do it for just to share the message. I truly understand that God has given me a gift, and this gift of this platform of podcasting. I ask tons of questions. I feel like I'm a great podcast host, and this is my duty to be able to teach other people and to reach other people, is to share stories and tips. And that's the big part. And that's my why. That's why I keep doing the podcast. It's not my moneymaker, but it's my responsibility and my duty to just keep sharing and shining light on people so that they can teach and learn and take action and hopefully change their own life cycle so that we can keep working on that poverty gap.
That's it. You never know when your message is going to connect with somebody. And that's the thing about creating content at scale is, your episode 1332. I have no idea if episode 112 connected with somebody today that I recorded so long ago, but the message will find the person when it finds it, when it needs to find that person. And that's kind of the beauty of having this content put out there at scale. So I'm going to ask you like a critique question. You have your own podcast. You've been on a lot of podcasts. How did I do?
You did amazing. I love the questions and the fact that you have gone over 1,300 episodes. I mean, that is incredible to have that kind of commitment, to give your time to other people like that. I think it's incredible. So I am very appreciative to have this opportunity and for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, empowerhermoney.com, empowerhermoney.com, scrolling across the bottom of the website. Make sure you guys check that out. She's also got a great podcast. Let's see. I love the social media questions that pop up every once in a while, but I have no idea what's going on. I just wanted to say, dude with the beautiful bald head, and I was gladly taking his hand in marriage. Well, I'm already married, but thank you. But now you're gonna make me blush. See, there's the beautiful bald head. So every once in a while we get those funny ones. Angela, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, check out her website, empowerhermoney.com. You need to take control of your finances. You're the only one who has the power to make any changes, and it's up to you. And I get it. Sometimes you're scared, sometimes you're unaware, sometimes you just don't know where to go. And here are the tools for you to get there. And you can find her everywhere because she's done a great job branding herself. Her social is Empower Her Money. Just Google it. You'll find all her stuff. That's the power of podcasting. You put out content, you Google something like this, and boom, all the information shows up. So it's up to you to get educated and take that action. And Angela's here to help you just like we are. Angela, thank you very much for being on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
It's over. Go home.
Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast, but not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started today.
Thank you so much for tuning into Empower Her Money podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, and leave a review wherever you are tuning in.